Afternoon, everybody. I seem to have gained the lunchtime slot, so I won't take too long, because certainly my stomach's rumbling. Again, I feel a little bit for Ian this morning. My partner here in crime, Elle, couldn't be with us today and sends her apologies. So I've stood in, but this is mostly based on some of her recent work, and she's been very instrumental in helping us fundraise for the Trust over the last year or so. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Findhorn Initiative, and that's a project we've started up in the last 12 months or so. But first of all, let's have a little think about the sort of vision for the project. We're really trying to create a project here which is looking at the ecosystem restoration at a watershed scale. So that's pretty much in keeping with lots of things we've heard this morning. And that's the Findhorn catchment there on the slide. To the left. We've got sort of 3 or 4 areas within the project. Nature recovery is a key one. We're looking to improve the river woodland cover as a top priority, improve the landscape and the diversity of life within that, make the river wilder and make it more resilient to climate change, and also look at carbon storing potential. So all the key themes that we've heard about this morning, we've incorporated that into the initiative. But underlying that, and from our experience of working on the CC project and some other projects, we're extremely keen to connect with the communities, and that communities are fairly sparse in the upper end of the Findhorn, but there is, a village up there called Tomatin, but across the river as well, there's a lot of people who really like using the river for many different things. We started off primarily with the Trust looking at angling issues and fish issues, but we're very keen to broaden beyond that, but also take those interests with us as well. And what we've also found with a number of talks now is the connectedness of the rivers extends well beyond those initial communities. People use the river for many, many different things, from walking the dog to whitewater rafting and everything in between. And they get a sense of wellness from it, and well-being, so we're very keen to build on that and build a spirit of stewardship across the river. The other aspect is economics, and we live in generally a rural area. There's a bit of a disconnect though with our two towns at the bottom end, and indeed the village of Tomatin, who don't perhaps connect as well as they should with the area, and it's important that we try and create some new opportunities, new training, green jobs, nature-based enterprises. So it's quite a wide range that we're after here. And also to try and up natural capital investment and have projects ready to move into that area, again, which we've seen in previous talks this morning. And the river catchment, so we're certainly using that as a transition to a well-being economy as well, and try and pick up on that thread and theme. If we look at the Findhorn catchment, there's three areas we figure. I mean, you could split it up a bit more, I guess, but we could start at the coast and the estuary. The Findhorn Bay is an important nature reserve. It used to hold really good beds of seagrass and native oyster and mussel populations. Most of those have gone, but we are looking to maybe enhance that in due course, so there's certain projects we can carry out there. Middle catchment and area around Forest and Findhorn has been plagued with non-native species, particularly hogweed and knotweed. We've worked heavily on that over the last few years through the CC project, and that's improved greatly. But for purposes of this talk, I'm going to focus on the upper catchment, where we're looking at riparian woodland primarily. Now, fundamental to that is engaging with landowners and the local community in the area, and landowners also includes their staff, mainly gamekeepers and other helpers. And certainly to kick this project off, we've spent quite a bit of time speaking with those entities and gaining their views on it as well, so that we don't come up with something that's just not workable. But key aims are riparian woodland regeneration. We also thought that we'd bring in peatland restoration. However, once we did a bit more research on that, we found that the local deer management group, the Mona Lea Deer Management Group, have been working extensively on this and have well-formulated plans with most of the estates, and many of the estates have moved on this and indeed completed the work already. So we'll provide a bit of a supporting role there. It won't become our main driver. But we're also looking at opportunities for other habitats, wetlands, etc., meadowgrass areas, that sort of area as well. So that's a little bit in the back burner for the moment. That's what the upper catchment looks like. It's probably no different from many other upper catchments. I actually rather like it. I come from Orkney. There's no trees there, so what the heck's wrong with that? You know? But that's not the way it should be. There's relics of tree stumps and stuff from centuries ago, and I think it's becoming clear to all that that needs to be improved and changed. We consider the upper part of the Findhorn a salmon stronghold, and we still, up until at least very recently anyway, have found that good numbers of fish are up there. That's evidenced by some of our catches, but also in our juvenile surveys. So it's a really, really important area for the river. But we've heard it threading through most of the talks today. River temperatures are on the rise. We've not been as high as Jamie's recorded, but this last summer we had temperatures over 20 degrees in the main stem, and no doubt they were a good deal higher in the tributaries, and that's threatening salmon and trout's existence, and indeed other fish, I dare say, as well, such as eels and lampreys. So it's important we move on this. The Scottish River Temperature Monitoring Network is one of the most fantastic pieces of work, I think, that's been created in the last few years, and I can't applaud it enough, really. Overall, in the Findhorn, 50% of the Findhorn is under threat for rising temperatures, and in the upper catchment, nearly all of it is under threat. So it's serious, serious problem, and really time to take action. Looking a little bit at some data. This is our the sort of densities of fish from our juvenile surveys. This is just for the upper catchment, the various tributaries that are up there, from 1997, when I started as a boy, up to 2018. Again, the NEPS project has been extremely helpful. It's provided us some real good baselines to aim for. And lo and behold, Upper Findhorn looks fantastic. We exceed the baselines for both salmon fry and salmon par. Wonderful. It's still okay, but our last survey in 21 maybe gives a sign for the future. Salmon par numbers have certainly dropped up there, and salmon fry numbers have also dropped. Now again, as anybody who does juvenile fish surveys know, there is huge variation from year to year. We could go back next year and find that it's fantastic again. However, I think that might be something of a trend that's beginning to develop, so we cannot be complacent. With that in mind, we've revised our management plan a few years back, and took some time to produce, and all the boards in the areas generally endorsed it, and number one priority is to try and tackle climate crisis and its effect on rivers and fish. Number two, as you can see, river habitat and land use dovetails into that. So we're trying to shift the trust and its emphasis from being really pretty focused on fish to actually taking a much more holistic view and a landscape scale view. And that leads us on to river woods and their benefits. We've had quite a few of them before already today. I don't need to run through them all, but certainly increased shading is the priority. Reductions in erosion, etc., follow, and better nutrient load, etc., all follow on from this. And also shelter, not just for fish, but for other animals, which maybe that shelter's disappeared some time ago, and we can see a much more broader improvement in the biodiversity of the upper area. I'm delighted to hear as well this morning that this is starting to fit in with legislative responsibilities, and we're hearing this a bit more from landowners as we begin our chats with them. They're keenly aware that these things are becoming more important, and this type of approach helps them meet some of the goals that are required within Biodiversity Plan 3030, Net Zero, etc. So we seem to be pushing on a bit of an open door at the moment, which is good news. So where have we got to? With Elle's help, and I can't stress this high enough, she's a very able fundraiser and seems to know how to make a project fit, whereas I would have stopped well before the even initial application stage. We have managed to secure significant funding through Just Transition, and a little bit more on the structure of that in a moment. Nature Restoration Fund, and I'm hoping today that we will get funding from the LNER Community Fund as well. which has given us a real good pot to start working with. And we have a graduate placement coming with the Work in River scheme this summer as well. But it's not all been a success, though. We did make a bid to Highland Council. That didn't come off. And SMEF, your favourite one, Pedro, it didn't work either. But there we are. We'll try again in the future. Now, that's given us a good pot, and indeed my chairman told me at the last steering group meeting, for goodness sake, stop getting funding, Bob. We don't know what to do with it. Well, we have plenty of ideas what to do with it, and we will pick up the pace again later in the year. Just transition. This was a really curious one to go for. When Elle started discussing this with me, I thought, we just don't fit this, but actually we do. And it's good to think out of the box a little bit from time to time. In essence, aims to finance businesses and communities to transition to net zero approaches in their work. Well, and also help with environmental improvements. And we're ideally suited to do that. And we were very lucky. We put in a speculative bid for a year, and they seemed to like it so much that they gave us all the money. So that was tremendous. LNER, this is one again, cast your web wide. Didn't even know this fund existed. And LNER have a community fund which, if the railway goes through an area, there's a certain boundary around that you could pick up funding for a variety of things. Many of them are aimed at education and disabilities and other things, but there's a strong environmental sustainability element to this one too. So fingers crossed that'll come through for us later today. And of course we picked up Nature Restoration Fund, which is a much more clear one. So we've formulated a steering group. We've gained significant funding over the next year. We've appointed a project officer who will start in a week's time, which will take some of the pressure off Elle and I. It's been pretty hectic over the last couple of months. We've had landowner meetings with at least 5 landowners so far, and that's been relatively successful. All have been quite enthusiastic, maybe bar one. And we've had follow-up meetings with them as well, which means we are beginning to start to get moving on this. Importantly, we've also had 2 community meetings with the Tomatin community groups, and that's proved also very, very positive. I think we've just timed it correctly. They're looking to develop community woodlands in the area, and we've come along with a means of facilitating that, which is fantastic. Through the Nature Restoration Fund, we're developing a monitoring plan. That's proved quite difficult, actually, but we've made good progress on it, and we put that out to tender, and we've now got tenders all accepted, so is in place and will actually go ahead. That's looking at water quality, water flow, invertebrates, soil types, remnant forestry, and then that'll allow us to target areas where we can address with riparian woodland creation. And we also bought an electric car, since we have to be net zero, and we take delivery of that in April. Other project, we've developed our vision and strategy, but that needs a bit more work because we're looking at a long term here. We're looking actually here at an initiative that may last at least 100 years. So not short term as we normally do, much, much longer. And that's been encouraged by many of the foresters we've spoken to think very much longer than we normally do. We aim as a main output to have woodland plans for all the landowners up in the upper catchment. There's 10 key landowners, and there's 2 or 3 others, and then 2 community groups. So that's our output, and those plans would then go into Scottish Forestry government bids. Although we do have some funds that we can support tree planting within the Trust Transition Fund as well. And it would be a shame to come out the end of the year without some planting in place. It's at last given me a chance to develop a proper GIS system, and that'll dovetail into our monitoring plan, and also to commission a pearl mussel survey. Every so often we get pearl mussel shells handed to us, but we've no idea whether there's a viable population in the river, so that's a great step forward as well. I've been really interested to hear about nature finance. That's our next sort of area to look at as well, and we've got some consultants on board to help us go through that, but certainly would like to make contact with people who are pursuing that, who are here today. But for all of that positive, there is lots of big problem areas. Deer management comes up again and again. We have large deer populations up there. They are being controlled fairly well, but there's a heck of a lot more work to do to bring them to a level that will allow regeneration to take off without extensive fencing. And there's a lot of willingness to get over as well. We're talking 3, 4, 5 generations of people who have done deer stalking, so you've got to shift that approach on the land to get some movement there. But I think at the moment the door's open. Thank you for your progress. Some thanks to a number of key people who have helped us there. The first few are our steering committee, and take a good point from Roger there. We have got a lawyer involved already, so we're ahead there, but we do need an accountant. My thanks to Luke Cummins for help initially in handling large funds, and also Alison, many thanks as well. And also Duncan, who always keeps me right practically, and I know Duncan's in the audience today. And I didn't have a room in the box, Russ, but again, thanks for your initial advice as well. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much.